আজকে আমরা টরন্টোর সাহিত্য প্রেমীরা এই হারবার ফ্রন্টে এসেছি টরন্টো ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ফেস্টিভ্যাল অফ অথার্সে। আমাদের সাথে আছেন আমাদের অতি প্রিয় সুজিত কুসুম পাল। সুজিত কুসুম পাল, আপনার কেমন লাগছে আজকে এই উৎসবে এসে?
থ্যাংক ইউ ফর আস্কিং মি। খুব ভালো লাগছে এই জন্যে যে মনে হচ্ছে আজকে সত্যিকারের একটা রিলেশনশিপ গড়ে। কীরকম রিলেশনশিপ? 2020-তে যদি বলি, আমরা যে প্রথমবার অংশগ্রহণ করলাম সেটা ছিল একটা কানেকশন। তারপর 2021-এ কি হলো? কমিউনিকেশন হলো, হ্যাঁ, কন্টিনিউ হচ্ছে কানেকশনের পরে। এইবার মনে হচ্ছে উই আর রিলেশনশিপ। সো কানেকশন, communication and relation. Complete.
So now we are a part of it. Oh, yes, thank you so much.
We are part of TIFA, Canadian literature. Thank you very much.
আমাদের সাথে আছেন দেবাঞ্জনা মুখার্জি ভৌমিক। তিনি গত বছর টিফাতে অংশগ্রহণ করেছেন। আপনার কেমন লাগছে এবারে টিফাতে এসে?
খুব ভালো লাগছে, এবং সবচেয়ে যেটা বড় কথা, আমি যেটা বুঝতে পারলাম আগের বছরের থেকে এইবার অডিয়েন্সে আমরা শুধু আমাদের বাংলা ভাষাভাষী মানুষের সাথেও ইংরাজি ভাষার মানুষদের তাদেরকে পেলাম, এবং আরও বেশি সংখ্যক মানুষদের কাছে আমরা পৌঁছে দিতে পারলাম আমাদের বাংলা ভাষার যে সাহিত্য চর্চা আমরা যে করি সেটা আরও অনেকের কাছে পৌঁছে গেল। এবং আমি এটা নিয়ে এসেছিলাম আগের বারের স্মৃতির যেটা রয়েছে গতবার পার্টিসিপেন্ট হিসাবে। এইবার দর্শক আসন থেকেও অনেক কিছু জানতে পারলাম, শেখার তো কোনো শেষ নেই। খুব ভালো লাগলো এইবারের টিফাতে আমাদের বাঙালিদের এইভাবে এত সুন্দরভাবে অংশগ্রহণ করা।
শুরু করতে যাচ্ছি টিফার আজকের প্রথম অধিবেশন, রাইডিং উইথ আ প্যাশন। সাথে আছেন ডক্টর দিলীপ চক্রবর্তী, রোকসানা লেস এবং সুধীর সাহা।
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Subrata Kumar, the Bengali writer. I invite you all to a session called Writing as a Passion, and you'll be happy to know that we the Bengalis, we are participating in TIFA for the third time this year. In 2020 we first participated, and we had 3 sessions in that year. And last year we got 2 sessions also, and in both the years we had 10 participants. And for this year we have got altogether 11 writers, and today we shall have 2 more sessions. One will be at 1 and last one will be at 4:30. And for this session I like to invite the other 3 panelists. They will be sharing about their experiences of writing, and writing in Bengali, and writing in Bengali living in Canada. That is the most important thing. And for that session, first of all, I like to invite Dr. Dilip Chakraborty. Let me introduce Dr. Dilip Chakraborty. Dr. Chakraborty is a former eminent educator, and I must mention that we have celebrated Dr. Chakraborty's 86th birth anniversary some months before, and in that event we actually launched his last book, the autobiographical English book named Gene, the memoir of a Canadian Bengali. And he has altogether 4 books to his credit. He was born in Bangladesh, then East Pakistan, and later on in 1947 during the partition his family left Bangladesh or East Pakistan for India, and there he did his MA in English literature from 2 universities, meaning that he has got 2 master's degree and 1 PhD in English literature. Dr. Chakraborty, thank you very much for joining TIFA. Now I like to invite Sudhir Saha. What should I say? He was born in Bangladesh. He was a graduate from Datta University He was a lawyer by profession, but more than that, I should say, he was an army officer. But he was an army officer, but more than that, he was actually a writer. And by now, he has more than 20 books to his credit. He has been doing here a business firm, conducting a business firm, but the most important thing is that he has been writing very hugely on the socio-political issues of Bangladesh and of the international context as well. Thank you very much, Shurisha, for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
The microphone is on. Now, I like to invite Roxana Lace, a prose writer, a traveler writer, and whatnot, because she has been living in Canada for how many years? More than 20 years, but the thing is that he hasn't lost her interest in writing Bengali, in Bengali. He has been writing all the time, every day, every week. Her writings are published in many newspapers, online things, etc., etc. And she did her post-graduation from Dhaka University of Bangladesh. And if I mention some of the English translations of the titles of her books, that would be Blue Water and the Moonlight, In the Stream of Unknown, Connection, A Journey of Light, Golden Light in a Rainy Moment, In Search of Dream City, and Letter to Sky. Thank you very much, Roxana, for being with us. Before going to the session, we acknowledge that words and stories that have been shared on this land for thousands of years. Toronto International Festival of Authors operates on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Wendat peoples. The land is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, a treaty to share and protect this land through friendship and respect. We thank those who have cared for this land, and we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here and connect with one another through stories. Ladies and gentlemen, look around Canada, look across Canada, we'll find that there are writers of Bengali language from coast to coast to coast. We have Bengali writers in Vancouver. We have Bengali writers even in the far east of Halifax. We have a good number of writers in Canada, in Toronto as well. Dr. Chakraborty, you started writing on some 8 years ago in 2016. This is very interesting. Till 2016, we didn't see, or the history doesn't say anything he wrote, or might be not that very significant. In 2016, we got the first Bengali book by him. What actually made you interested in starting writing? And why didn't you write it before, during your long career?
In one word, I will say, I did not publish any book before because I had not met Subrata Kumar before. He was the man who was a catalytic agent. Up to the age of 78, I had no published book. And suddenly one day, when he was just newly arrived, and I just came to know him only for a few years back, he came to my house all of a sudden and told me point blank, Chakravarti, you are such a profound scholar. How come you have not published work? I was flabbergasted. I was a scholar. I never knew that. And you are the first man. So I took time to compose myself. Then I said, I do not dare because I don't know whether people will adopt. He said, no, go on. And he was the man who first encouraged me to write something. Then I dared, and I could write my first published book. And in this way, I must say, another gentleman, Sujit Kusumpal, he is very much here. He was the man who introduced me to Subrata Kumar.
Shruti Shahagi has been writing for the last 3 decades, or it could be more than 3 decades. And during the 90s of the last century, he actually started writing. You were a retired army officer then, and most probably you are then a law practitioner, so far I can recollect. And may I ask you, what actually encouraged you to come to writing?
Actually the answer is very simple. It's passion. Maybe that is the reason people, the Chakravarti didn't know that in his inside a writer is sitting. But when a scope came, he understood that yes, he can write. So passion is like that. When you get a scope, your passion comes out. I started writing actually more before that. I wrote a poem. I now remember. That was my starting. I wrote a poem on Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. I think
The founder father of
Bangladesh. He was then, I think in 1972, I believe, if I am not wrong. And after I went to Dhaka College, I met one friend. He was actually a poet. At that time, at that age, he was a poet. So I showed him my poem. I wrote it, and he said, "Can I get some adjustment? Can I get some corrections?"
Anything on that?
Yeah, I said, "Yeah, go ahead." And after that, I found that he changed almost all. That is, so I understood this is not my job actually. This is not my one. So I stopped writing poem. That was the one poem I wrote, and I stopped.
Only one poem in
Only
your,
one
in your
poem
life.
in your life, and another poem at this age is with for Pohela Boishakh. I wrote another poem. That's the different issue, but that was my
The first day, on the first day of the Bengali New Year.
But in 1991, actually, I published a book. It is on narcotics, law, narcotics, and the society. And Bangla Academy published that book. And
The first book of yours was published by the Bangla Academy.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that was
I
nice.
was fortunate that was a text book. They have a textbook non-fiction category, and that was a textbook category, and that was a reference book for Dhaka University students for social science, law, and like this. So that was my first book, and then I continued writing in newspapers. Actually, still I am writing in Bangladesh newspapers. There are 5 daily newspapers continuously and regularly published my articles, and
You are all the time contributing to 5
five national dailies, yeah. And that is so on that aspect, that that is my subject of research, that is my subject of reading and all the studies and everything. So I jot down in my mind, I wrote down something and that was published and that is being published. That is the writing.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sudhi Shah. Now let me go to Roxana Lace. And many novels, books of poetry, travel writings, prose books you have written. All the genres you have tried, I have found. And the same question, if I make to you, when did you start writing?
Thank you, Subrata, and thank you, TIFA, to give me this opportunity to talk, and all audience here. I'm very happy that you guys are listening. So I think I born as a writer. I started writing when I didn't understand very much. I was listening the song on that time in radio, and I found the rhythm is nice and the melody is nice, and I started making the mix up, the rhyming of words, and I was writing maybe when I just don't understand very much.
Dr. Chakravarti, what do you think?
This will enrich the domain of Canadian literature itself. If Bengali written in Bengali has taken the part of Canadian literature, it would enrich the Canadian literature as such. So it is a good idea, and I think it should be feel like that. Nothing wrong, but reasonable.
Yes.
Sort of like this. If you write about Canada, about Canadian, definitely that is part of the
Canadian literature. But if I write about Bangladesh, I am a Canadian, I am a Canadian citizen, Canadian PR, I am living in Canada, what I will produce, what I will create, that should be considered as Canadian literature. Why not?
It might be not, because but what I understand, I believe, Canada accepts other languages. Canada is not Bangladesh. There is no weight of other languages in other people. But here, everybody respects others' languages and everything. So, yeah, in a nutshell, in a greater sense, definitely all the languages, all the literature, all the writings, combinedly it represents the Canada and Canadians. So we are Canadians. That's why what is coming from us, definitely that is part of the Canada. So in that sense it is, but mostly if I write regarding Canada, regarding my life in Canada or your life in Canada, definitely that is part, no doubt about it.
I think Canada gives us priority to, as we think, as we write, and they keep that priority to keep our culture. So Canada gives us a bigger position to do it, but to reach to more people, we have to work on English or French. So as you mentioned, her book written in French, even she write in Taiwan, so she can meet other people, so more people can read her. So this is like we speak in back home, Bangladesh, in different colloquial language, but we prefer to write in a Shuddha Bangla, which is pure Bangla. So that's why we think we should go for English or French to translate that other people
for
can.
For that reason, actually, you see, what I was focusing on is the TIFA has invited the Bengali language writers this year. They did it in 2020, in 2022, and this year. We are speaking in English here, but some of the times we shall have the right to speak in Bengali as an audience, we are very happy that Toronto International Festival of Authors TIFA, they have invited us for 3 sessions. Today, all the sessions will be today. This was the first session. Our next session will be at 1. Bengalis in Canada, 3 writers from the Bengali community who are Bengali origin writers, but writing in English, they will be participating. And at 4:30, there will be reading Bengali poems by the Bengali writers with English translation. Thank you very much for being with us for this session. Thank you very much.
আজ আমাদের সাথে আছেন কবি জান্নাতুন নাইম, একজন লেখক। উনি এসেছেন টরন্টো ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ফেস্টিভ্যাল অফ অথার্সে। আপনার কেমন লাগছে উৎসবে? ভীষণ ভালো লাগছে। ভালো লাগছে। আর হচ্ছে আপনি তো একজন লেখক, এটা কি টিফায় আপনি ফার্স্ট টাইম এসেছেন? জি, আচ্ছা। আর কিছু বলতে চান আমাদের দর্শকদের উদ্দেশ্যে?
হ্যাঁ, আমি বলবো যে বাংলাদেশি হিসাবে এটা আমার একটা চমৎকার একটা অভিজ্ঞতা। এখানে এসে আমার মনে হচ্ছে যে আমরা বাংলাদেশি এবং বাঙালি এরা বিলীন হয়ে যায়নি, আর ভাষাটাও খুব সুন্দরভাবে আমরা তুলে ধরতে পারছি, সেটা আমি প্রাউড ফিল করি। তো সেই জন্য সুব্রতা দেখে অনেক ধন্যবাদ, এবং তার যে টিম আছে পুরোটাকে আমি কৃতজ্ঞতা জানাই। আর আমি এখানে অংশগ্রহণ করতে পেরে নিজেকে প্রাউড ফিল করছি।
আজ আমাদের সাথে সুদূর হ্যালিফ্যাক্স থেকে এসেছেন অতনু দাশগুপ্ত। অতনু, আপনার কেমন লাগছে টিফাতে এসে আজকে?
হ্যাঁ, আমার অসাধারণ লাগছে এসে। প্রথমবারের মতো আসলামের গ্রুপ থেকে আমাদের সুব্রত স্যার এখানে ইনভাইট করেছেন। তো এখানে আমি এসে যা দেখছি সেটা হচ্ছে যে এখানে এমন একটা মিলন মেলা এটা, যেখানে আমি বয়োজ্যেষ্ঠ মানে একদম দীপ চক্রবর্তী, যার বয়স 80 ঊর্ধ্ব থেকে শুরু করে আমরা লাবণী ইসলামকে দেখতে পাচ্ছি, যিনি আমাদের প্রজন্মের একজন। তো এটা আমি বলবো যে আমাদের অনেকগুলো প্রজন্ম এখানে এক ছাদের নিচে এক জায়গায় এসেছেন। এটা অনেক মানে অন্য ধরনের একটা অভিজ্ঞতা। আর আমি যে 3টা সেশন এবার হচ্ছে এগুলো নিয়ে আমি লিখেছি, তো ওখানে লিখতে গিয়ে আমি যেটা দেখেছি যে রাইটাররা এখানে বসে যা যা বলছেন এটা কোথাও নেই, মানে ওনাদের স্বপ্নের কথা বলছেন যেগুলো কোথাও লিখিত হয়নি। তো সব কিছু মিলিয়ে অসাধারণ একটা অভিজ্ঞতা। আমি আশা করব যে এভাবে সব লেখকরা এক জায়গায় আসবেন এবং একে অপরকে অনুপ্রাণিত করবেন। ধন্যবাদ।
আজকে আমাদের সাথে আছেন শ্রেয়সী। শ্রেয়সী, আপনার কেমন লাগছে আজকে টিফায় এসে?
দারুণ লাগছে। অনেক ধন্যবাদ সুব্রত দা, তো আমাদের আয়োজক আর আমাদের অত্যন্ত উদ্যমী মানুষ। ওনার জন্যই আমি গতবারের টিফাতে অংশগ্রহণ করেছিলাম প্যানেলে, এবং এইবারে দর্শকের মধ্যে রয়েছি। কিন্তু মানে আসি এখানে আমার ইন্সপিরেশনের জন্য, অত্যন্ত প্রেরণা দেয় কথা শুনতে যারা বাংলা সাহিত্যে কাজ করছেন এবং বাঙালি যারা ইংরেজি সাহিত্যে কাজ করছেন। আমাদের যেই প্যানেলটা সবে হলো আর কি একটা সময়, সেখানে আমরা যেরকম শুনছিলাম সেই গল্প শুনতে মানে ইটস আ পার্সোনাল ইন্সপিরেশন। সিরিয়াসলি মানে আশা করছি পরের বারও আসবো, এবং এবারে টিফাতে মানে বাঙালি লেখকদের জন্য আরও একটা প্যানেল রয়েছে, উইচ ইজ মোর দ্যান হোয়াট ইট ওয়াজ লাস্ট ইয়ার। আর আমার আগে আরেকজন বলছিলেন, আরেকজন দর্শক প্রতিক্রিয়া জানাচ্ছিলেন যে এবারে আরেকটা যেটা আমি দেখলাম পরিবর্তন এবং অত্যন্ত সেটা হার্টেনিং চেঞ্জ, সেটা হচ্ছে যে দর্শক মণ্ডলীতে কিন্তু শুধু বাঙালি নয় বা শুধু যারা বক্তা ছিলেন তাদের পরিচিত জনই নন, আরও অনেকে ছিলেন অন্যান্য ভাষাভাষীর লোকজন। সুতরাং আমাদের বাঙালি কমিউনিটির যারা সাহিত্য নিয়ে চর্চা করছে তাদের লেখা যে সবার কাছে পৌঁছচ্ছে, এটা দারুণ গর্বের বিষয়। ভীষণ ভীষণ ভালো লাগছে।
শুরু করতে যাচ্ছি আজকের দ্বিতীয় অধিবেশন, বেঙ্গলিজ ইন ক্যানাডা। সাথে থাকছে আরিফ আনোয়ার, লাবণী ইসলাম এবং কে গান্ধার চক্রবর্তী।
Gandhar is a Montreal-born writer and musician. Not born in India, I believe.
No.
He was born in Canada. Gandhar holds an MA in Theological Studies at Concordia University in 2007, and later he did his PhD in Religious Science in 2014 from the University of Montreal. And his first book of poetry was published in 2009, that was Kolkata Dreams, and later on in 2010, the Maple Vedas came out. Gandhar, thank you very much and welcome you. We'd like to welcome you to our session.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Our next participant is poet Lovely Islam. Lovely was born in Canada, the same, to Bangladeshi parents. Gandhar was born to Indian Bengali parents. Lovely's poem, A Lunar Landing in 1966, was shortlisted for the CBC Prize. CBC Poetry Prize it's called, in 2017, and that actually made her very popular to the poetry readers of Canada. Because that poem was selected among 2,400 poems and only 5 got shortlisted. Her first chapbook was Light Year, it was published in 22, and Trimming the Wick, it came out in 23. Lavani has a big sister, I must mention her name, she is poet Doyali Islam, whose book Heft was shortlisted for Griffin Poetry Prize Shortlist 2020. Lavani, thank you very much for being with us.
It's such a pleasure, thank you.
And our third panelist will be Arif Anwar. Arif is a bit different in this regard. He was born in Bangladesh, and he used to work with PRAG, the world's largest non-government organization. Later, he migrated to Canada. He did his degrees, BS and MS in psychology from the George Washington University. And currently, he is working in the Ministry of Children and Youth, serving as a senior policy analyst. Arif's novel, The Strong, was a great success. It was published in 2019, Arif? 2018. And we'd like to welcome Arif Anwar. Gandhar, in 2009, your first volume of poems, Kolkata Dream, came out. Could you please tell us about your poetic journey from the very beginning to this major? It was a major recognition so far I have observed. Though the latter one, the Maple Vedas, was also a great success. But how did you come to Kolkata Dreams? What was your journey to that book?
Okay, thank you, Subrata. Thank you everyone for being here today, part of the TIFA panel. Really appreciate it. This is the techno portion of the panel, so I think you're going to stop soon. But it's a great question. So it came out rather innocently in its own way. This first book of poetry, Kolkata Dreams. Having been born in Montreal, having grown up in Canada and Montreal, I never really met my extended family or got to see where my parents are from, how they lived, how they grew up, my own background. And I think that's a relatable experience for many immigrant families where they're really disconnected from the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents. And my parents, the last time I'd been in India, I'd been 7 for about a month. And then I just sort of showed up at the age of 20. And without really any plan or expectation, I just thought, well, I know I want to write, so I started a travel journal. I know I want to meet my family, but I don't know what's expecting me. Are we going to get along? Who are they? And so I had it in mind that, if it just seemed right, maybe I would travel. But it turned out that the family there was so uber talented and so artistic. An uncle who was well schooled in Indian classical music. I was learning singing, I was going to poetry readings, Bengali poetry readings on rooftops, and trying out my travel poems there in English, the only English writer. And I started to realize, okay, there's probably something here. So when I came back from India, I took all the notes, even when I was like writing on the rickshaw to really get the feel of the rickshaw ride, trying to decipher my own scribbles. And it took about 3 years to have a draft that I was proud of, 3 years, 2 rejections, but they gave me great advice. And around that time, I was able to connect with Sunil Gangopadhyay, I'm sure a lot of you know. And he just kind of gave me the thumbs up. He's like, yeah, this should be a book. I read it, this should be a book. And around the same time, I noticed that there was a publishing house called 8 House Publishing. They were looking for new works. So I submitted to them in 2007. And this book finally came out in 2009. So it was almost a decade in the making, but you know, I stuck to it, and I'm so glad it's, I just read one on CBC today, so I'm so glad it all happened. And I'm still able to share these poems all these years later.
Thank you very much, Anati. And now, allow me to ask a question to Lavani. Lavani, your poem, A Lunar Landing, 1966, that was shortlisted. And for the CBC Poetry Prize in 2017. Could you please tell our audience about your poetic journey? Because that was a success for you that made you popular, not only to the Canadians, but with the Bengalis, we got a shock. Oh, what a poem! And the poet is from the Bengali origin. Oh, who is she? What has she written? How many poems he has written by now? These are the questions in the Bengali community. Could you please tell from where actually you start and how did you reach there to that poem?
Thank you so much. I have to say it's amazing to hear the other side of the experience for this story.
Okay.
Yeah. So where does writing begin? But I think I've always had a writer inside me, and any of you, I know there are many of you who are writers in the audience, so you will know this. And as a child, I was writing all the time, and I was that kid when my birthday came around. All of my friends bought me journals, so I had journals, you know, piled high. And I always had an insatiable desire just to document everything, you know, everything in my experience. And if I couldn't write it down, in some way the experience wasn't consolidated and complete. And then, you know, you go to school, you go to university, and that creative writing falls away, at least it did for me. But then later on, I had started teaching. I was an elementary school teacher, teaching for the Peel District School Board, and I absolutely I loved my job. But you reach a point where that desire to write exceeds anything that could keep you from writing, and then there's a fundamental shift. And so in 2010, I made a huge life shift. You're gonna get a lot of my story now. I wanted to keep teaching in my life, but I wanted to shift to arts education. I work at the Art Gallery of Ontario now as an educator there, and I cleared space, psychological space, but also space in my schedule to write. And I actually signed up for a creative writing course at the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies, which I know will be familiar to some of you here. And that was just a wonderful experience because it gave me a writing community, it gave me accountability because I had an instructor who was setting assignments, and I didn't want to disappoint them, and I didn't want to disappoint my classmates. And there were a range of us. So there were undergraduate students, graduate students, there were working professionals like me who were trying to carve space for writing, and we would have workshops where we would bring our poetry and share it with others and offer one another feedback. And I still remember the first time I gathered up the courage to share one poem with my peers, and the feedback was so positive and it was so encouraging that I thought to myself, yes, this is a path on which I want to be. And so I kept going that way. And there's a funny kind of rejection story around that lunar landing in 1966, because that poem was written over a period of 6 months. I write very slowly. And I had submitted it to a literary journal in the United States. And after some time, I received a rejection, a very encouraging rejection but I received the rejection on the day of the CBC Poetry Prize deadline. And having had some distance from the work, I made one edit that was very necessary. I did not think twice, and I just submitted it to the CBC Poetry Prize. I had never submitted before, and that one decision just changed everything for me.
Thank you very much. I'm going to Arif. Arif's only book is The Storm. That's a novel, and which has created huge, what should I say, tumult in the Bengali community. Because I'm writing more. Oh, you are writing more. Are you sure? And that was in 2018.
Yes.
And did you publish any other writing before that novel? This is a very small question. Later on I will go to the main question.
No.
What? Not at all? That was the first published thing you did have?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that is very interesting. How did the writer who didn't publish any other thing before could publish one voluminous novel, a good one? Could you please show a copy of the book to the audience? Oh, yeah.
There's
Two different copies. And he published it from Canada, and
My biggest fan.
and the publisher was?
In Canada, it's HarperCollins,
Oh.
and
That
in the US
was
it's,
not that very easy thing to be published by the HarperCollins. Okay, another question is, how did you get the idea of writing the novel?
So, trust me, this is related to the question you asked.
You are a Canadian poet, and you do have a Bengali linkage. If I ask you the question, how do you enjoy your Bengali connection in writing? That I actually know what you are going to answer. But I am asking the question that you answer that question to our audience. That how do you enjoy your Bengali connection in writing poems in a Canadian context?
Thank you. So I think in a lot of ways, in my case, this first trip I told you about, going to Kolkata when I was 20, is what made me a poet. You know, I didn't go with high aspirations of writing a book. I just wanted an experience, and mostly to meet my family. And you know, we were talking today because we read some poems earlier in the morning, that there's something a little bit different about our poetry. Even if we're writing in English, it sounds almost Bengali. There's something just different in the way the words are put together, in the cadence, in the rhythm, that not only reflects sort of that Bengali connection that I wanted to find out more about, you know, but it connects also like just the rhythm of Calcutta. If you've ever walked the streets there and you ever felt the vibrations, you know, it's like at a very erratic time. And so just to capture that. And so I think having discovered, like, you know, when you're young, when I was younger as a teenager, you know, you write poems, but I don't know where those are. They weren't worth publishing. They were just the passion, the seeds of passion. But then you realize that this is actually a book. This is actually something that probably should be published. People can it's something to share. It's something that's about me, but beyond me at the same time. So that's one side. And then coming back to Canada, I also found that the gods of India that I discovered there and formed a relationship with, Shiva, Krishna, Ganesha, Hanuman, they followed me back also to Canada. And they started to color my own experiences as a Canadian, where sometimes I would feel a little bit like Krishna stealing butter. Sometimes I would feel a little bit like Shiva, which we won't get into, but you probably know. And sometimes I felt a little bit like Hanuman, just a cheeky monkey. So that's in the second book, the Untold Maple Vedas. It's sort of the untold tales of the gods of India, my interaction with them, but right here on Canadian soil.
Okay, could you please?
Okay, so Arif, I'm going to surprise you here. So there's a poem in this pamphlet, Trimming the Wick, that was inspired by one sentence in your novel. Yeah, and this is my favorite part of gatherings like this, because we're writing in our separate spheres, but what I'm curious about is how our works are in conversation with one another, because I do believe we release one another in a way. So, shall I read out this? sentence or would you?
Oh, I can't wait to hear
I
it.
flagged it here. Okay. It's one page. Here it is. In my version, on page 285. So this is from Arif's Anwar's The Storm. And this was the sentence. In Bangla, vowels, when placed between consonants or combined with them, change shape. And that single sentence, towards the end of the novel, sparked this poem.
Could you please show that page to our audience? Because I'm telling this because there's a point to look at. That yes, you can see that this was the first time in Canadian English book we have found the use of the Bengali letters.
The wind that moves through my grandmother's poems is southern, Dokhin, or southerly, Dokhin Dike. I keep forgetting. Are winds named for their origin or direction?
And actually this includes how the past, how the lineage of a writer comes through his or her writing. Okay, now I'm going to Arif, and you have to explain why the idea came to your mind to use the Bengali letters. I'm sure that was a very great challenge. Even the use of those in printing in the printing machine, that was not very easy for a Canadian publisher. Okay.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for not making me follow that with the reading of my own, because I don't think I could top that. And thank you, Lovely. It's a huge honor to even know. You never even told me. Wow. Thank you, Dana. It's beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. I think the reason there's not just Bala, I think there's also Mandarin in there, just so I can make life extra difficult for my publishers. And the way I came about it is that I speak only two languages. I speak Bangla and I speak English. And I was sort of wearing two hats when.
আপনি ভালো বাংলা বলতে পারেন?
হ্যাঁ, একেবারে সাবলীল।
Just take an example. How well she speaks.
অবশ্যই আমার মাতৃভাষা।
গান্ধার তুমি বাংলা বলতে পারো?
একটু বলতে পারি।
লাবণী তুমি পারো?
আমি বাংলা বলতে পারবো।
Okay, go on.
Sure.
You can all correct.
So, as I said, I speak only two languages, Bangla and English. And I sort of put on two hats with the decision to put in Bangla letters in there. One was for people who can read and write and speak Bangla. It was my way of saying, I see you and you're welcome. But it's sort of the comfort you get when you go to a different place or a foreign place and you see your mother tongue or mother script. And the other hat I put on was that of the English speaker. And I think we English speakers are very privileged because we can go almost anywhere in the world and there's this unspoken expectation that people will know our language or be able to communicate with us, right? It's a huge privilege that we don't always recognize. And when we don't encounter it, we're sort of shocked and bewildered a little bit. And I'm just not saying this as those English speakers, I'm including myself in that because I've been to countries that didn't speak either Bangla or English, and that was difficult. And when you're an English speaker and if you come across a foreign script, let's say you're passing by Chinatown or Bangla Town, and come across a foreign script on a storefront, you don't sort of have to contend with it. But I thought if I put the script directly on the page, then you sort of can't avoid it. You have to contend with something new, a different language or a different script. So it introduces the idea of a level of discomfort for the reader, and I think it's okay to have that in a book, maybe even deliberately, not because of content, but because of structure or other decisions the writers made to sometimes make the reader a little bit uncomfortable or discombobulated, and I think that's where it's coming from in putting in the Bangla script.
That was really very nice, and on behalf of the Bengali community writers, I like to congratulate you in this event. Yes, this is better. Because in generally what we see in the Bengali books, we see the quotations in English given there, but in English books, there are the quotations of the Bengali books, Bengali script, that is not very usual. And he has done that. Thank you very much and congratulations for being with us during this session. And with the Bengalis shall have the third session, the last one at 4:30 with our Bengali poets. They will be reading their Bengali poems with the English translation. We welcome you all to our third session. Thank you very much, our audience and our panelists.
Thank you, Subrata Kumar. Thank you very much.
আমাদের সাথে আছেন আমাদের কমিউনিটির অতি প্রিয় মুখ সামিনা চৌধুরী। সামিনা চৌধুরী, লেখকদের এই উৎসবে এসে আপনার কেমন লাগছে?
আমার তো খুব ভালো লাগছে। আমার আসলে কোনো ধারণাই ছিল না যে ইন্টারন্যাশনাল লেখকদের এত সুন্দর একটা ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ফোরাম হয় বা ফেস্টিভ্যাল হয়। দাদা আসতে বললেন, দাওয়াত করলেন, আসলাম। আমার মনে হচ্ছে যে আমার আসলে প্রতিটা সেশনই আসা উচিত ছিল। ইট ইজ সো এনকারেজিং। আই মিন, একটা দেশের লেখকদেরকে যদি উৎসাহিত করা হয়, লেখকদের যদি সম্মেলন হয়, তাহলে যেটা হয় যে ক্রিয়েটিভ চিন্তাভাবনার একটা বিকাশ ঘটে এবং লেখকরা যখন লিখেন সেই ক্রিয়েটিভ চিন্তাভাবনার একটা বিনিময় হয়, যেটা অবশ্যই খুবই দরকারি একটা জিনিস আমাদের এই সভ্যতাকে এগিয়ে নিয়ে যাওয়ার জন্য। আমার খুব ভালো লাগছে এবং আমি রিয়েলি গ্রেটফুল টু ইউ গাইস।
থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ। আজ আমরা টরন্টোর হারবার ফ্রন্টে এসেছি লেখকদের উৎসবে টিফা। আমাদের সাথে আছে নীলিমা দত্ত। নীলিমা দত্ত, আপনার কেমন লাগছে এই উৎসবে এসে?
ধন্যবাদ তোমাকে। আমার ভীষণ ভালো লাগছে, কারণ আমাদের বাংলা দেশি যারা আমরা আছি, বাঙালি কমিউনিটির সব লেখক, কবি, সাহিত্যিকদেরকে আমি আশেপাশে দেখতে পাচ্ছি। সবাই এখানে অংশগ্রহণ করেছে এবং এটা দেখে খুবই নিজেকে গর্বিত মনে হচ্ছে। বাঙালি, নিজে একজন বাঙালি, সব বাঙালি আশেপাশে সবাইকে অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ।
আপনাকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ। ধন্যবাদ। সাথে আছেন রোমেনা হক রুমা। রোমেনা হক রুমা, আপনার কেমন লাগছে আজকের উৎসবে এসে?
অবশ্যই এটা একটা বিরাট একটা সুযোগ আমাদের এই কানাডার মাটিতে বাংলা সম্মেলন এবং এতজন বাংলা লেখক লেখকের সাথে পরিচয় এবং বাংলাকে আমরা প্রতিনিধিত্ব করছি। অবশ্যই আমাদের এটা একটা গর্বের বিষয় এবং এটার উদ্যোক্তা আমি বলবো সুব্রতা, উনি আমাদেরকে এটার একটা মূল ধারার সঙ্গে সংযুক্ত করার জন্য সুযোগ করে দিয়েছেন। অবশ্যই এটা একটা মহৎ উদ্যোগ এবং আমরা প্রাউড সেই জন্য, এবং বারবার আমরা আরও চাই যে এই বাংলা সম্মেলন, এই টিফায়ের মাধ্যমে আমরা বাংলাকে অনেক আরও অন্য স্তরে নিয়ে যাবো, সবাই যাতে আরও বেশি জানতে পারে বাংলা সম্বন্ধে এবং আমাদের বাঙালি লেখক লেখিকা সম্বন্ধে। সেই প্রত্যাশায় আমরা আগামী বছরের জন্য আবার অপেক্ষা করব। ধন্যবাদ।
আমাদের সাথে আছেন আজকের টিফার প্যানেলিস্ট রোকসানা পারভিন শিমুল, আমাদের একজন কবি। আপনার কেমন লাগছে আজকের এই উৎসবে এসে?
আমার খুবই ভালো লাগছে আজকের উৎসবে এসে, কেননা এটা আমার প্রথম আসা। আসলে আমার অভিজ্ঞতা ছিল না টিফাতে আসার, কিন্তু পড়েছিলাম উচ্চ থেকে পর্বের বইতে দাদার বই থেকে, তো সুব্রত দাদার বই থেকে। তখন থেকে আমার একটা আগ্রহ ছিল যে টিফাতে জয়েন করবো। এসে দেখলাম যে অনেককে চিনি না, অনেক রাইটারদের সাথে আমার পরিচয় হলো। এটা একটা বিশাল পাওয়া আসলে, যে আমাদের বাংলা সাহিত্যিকদের সাথে অন্য দেশের অন্য ভাষাভাষীর সাহিত্যিকদের একটা মিলন মেলা। এটা আমাদের জন্য একটা গৌরবের, গর্বের, আর আমাদের সাহিত্যকে পৌঁছে দেওয়ার একটা বড় উদ্যোগ, উপায়।
অবশ্যই
আমার খুবই ভালো লেগেছে।
অনেক ধন্যবাদ।
ধন্যবাদ।
উৎসবের তৃতীয় পর্ব রিডিং বেঙ্গলি পোয়েমস। এখানে আছেন আমাদের সাথে শেখর গোমেজ, আঞ্জুমান রোজি, শিউলি জাহান এবং কাজী হেলাল।
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Subrata Kumar again to invite you to the third session of TIFA's today's events to reading Bengali poems. You all know that this is the third year in which the Bengali writers from Canada are participating in TIFA, the Toronto International Festival of Authors. We were first invited in 2020, later on in 2022. We participated in 2 sessions, and this year we have been invited to join 3 sessions. This session with me and to present Bengali poems to you are poet Shekhar Gomez. Shekhar Gomez is a poet, and more than that, he is a performer, I should say. He has been writing poems in Bangla for a long time. Take a seat. Thank you. His book of poetry named Monokolpo, in English it could be termed as Verses of Mind, was published in 2016. He writes essays too, mainly on films and music. All of these essays were published in the Bengali weeklies and literary journals. Anjuman Roji. Anjuman is a poet and an essayist. Anjuman studied Bengali literature at Datta University. She has published 4 books of poetry, 2 books of short stories, and 1 book of prose, along with 1 book of memorial. She writes on women's rights as well. Her poet will be Shivli Jahan. Shivli is a poet, a Bengali poet. She has 2 poetry books to her credit. The number 1 is Ashar Bagane Nil Prajapati, which was published in 2015, and the second one is Droher Shat Rong, which was published in 2016. Her poetic creations in Bengali encompasses a diverse array of themes with a primary focus on nature and humanity. Kazi Helal is a very noted cultural activist of the Bengali community of Toronto. He is a poet as well. His subjects of poetry encompasses the struggles of people, time, politics, love, nature, and history. He has 2 books of poetry to his credit. The books are Pankourir Dubsatar and Sravanir Chokhe Sthalpadra. That words and stories have been shared on this land for thousands of years. Toronto International Festival of Authors operates on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Ahnisha, Anina Bek, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Wendat peoples. This land is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuits, and Métis peoples, and is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, a treaty to share and protect this land through friendship and respect. We thank those who have cared for this land, and we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here and connect with one another through stories. Thomas Shekhar, could you please tell our audience, when did you start writing? What is the time you started writing poetry?
I started writing poems at my early age, very early age, when I was in grade 7 or 8.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and still writing.
And then, since then you had been writing?
Yes.
And could you please tell our audience, what was the time your first poem was published in any daily or?
It was, I think, 80s. But
in the
before
1980s?
that, yeah.
Okay.
Before that, My first poem was published in our school magazine.
Oh, okay.
School, yeah. Then I started writing also essays and mainly poems actually.
You had written during those days.
Yes.
But so far I have known that you have written so many poems, but you have got only one book of poetry to your credit. Why didn't you publish the other poems or the good number of poems in other volumes?
Actually, you know what? I lost them. You know?
Oh.
I mean, I didn't collect them. Or
you didn't preserve
those
the
magazines or periodicals, you know, where they are, I don't know right now.
Oh. The poets are mostly very forgetful, and it happened. Thank you very much for answering my question. Now I'm going to Anjuman Razi. Anjuman, what time did you first publish or did you first write your poem?
Actually, I started writing since my childhood.
Okay.
Because of my father. He was always after me to write something. He found me, I can write, I can express my feelings. How he found actually, whenever I need something, whenever I like money or other things, or I am upset, I get mad about something, I cannot go to in front of my father, I am very scared. That time I used to write and then put the
But in most of the cases we find that the parents are not that much interesting that their children are writing something.
No, that's the thing. I put this paper on the underneath the pillow, and when he was going to sleep, and then he read this and read, and then he show my mom and look at this, my daughter, how she is expressing her feelings. That's the way I started to become a.
Then we should be very much, very respectful, and we should have an applause for her father. For her father, she has been a writer now. Because during these days, so far I know that Anjuman Razi is one of the very strong voices from the Bengali community in poetry and in many other things.
Was published in the school magazine. That's after that I started writing, but not all the time. After that I found some good friend, best friend. One of my friends is here, and like you guys, I'm here like they are all my family. But beginning time I was very alone, so that time the loneliness is something comes to mind and heart, and then I started to write again. I came here 2000, and my first book published 2007.
And could you please tell our audience that I know your last book or the latest book published in the book fair in 2013 this year, it was regarding the women's rights like thing. Could you please tell something about that book? What is the content of that?
This book's name actually in Bengali, Nari Tumi Ke. English.
Women, who are you?
Women, who are you?
Yes.
Actually, we are women. We don't know about ourselves. We couldn't find our identity. We are always with father's name, husband's name. After husband, son comes as a guardian. So women as a human being, we have right. Women has right for every single thing how man can get from since they born until die. That's the things actually I want to focus in my book. And this recently whatever is happened actually is based on the Bangladesh story, Bangladesh women's rights.
In the context of Bangladesh women.
Yes, it's the maximum. And beside that, I brought some international feminist things, how we start from the feminism. Those things history, I wrote it down.
Go to Shivli Jahan. Shivli, could you please tell us during what time did you start writing poems?
Thank you. I began my writing poetry and rhymes from my childhood, but never harbored any intention to publish my works. During my time as a student at Dhaka University, I started working as a reporter and contributing features, essays, and interviews, but never published any poems, although I keep writing the poem. But upon moving to Canada, I started penning poems whenever I could find a moment, and I felt a profound urge of poetic inspiration within me. Maybe it might be for the beautiful nature of Canada or the people, the culture that inspired me a lot. And then I found myself in poetry, and I realized that this is the space I can find my inner peace and happiness.
Or does it mean that actually you started writing poetry after coming to Canada?
No, I started writing poems from my childhood, but never published actually.
Okay.
That's
But you
what I
started
said.
publishing those when you were here?
Yes, and later, after a few years, I decided to release my collection of poems, and I published my first book at 2015, and the second one the following year.
Oh, 2015 and 16.
And 2016.
And could you please tell our audience about the contents of that those
Poetries?
Yes, poetries or volumes?
Yeah.
Are the contents about nature?
It's mostly, it's on various topics, various emotional subjects, like whenever I feel I moved according to anything, I try to write. But I get inspired most of the time by the nature, the beauty of nature, and like the color of the change of color in different season, and the trees, the wave of ocean, the river. Even a little bird inspired me a lot to write a poem.
Or does it mean that most of your poems talk about the nature of Canada?
The nature of Canada, yeah, of course, right now, but still I write about my country, where I grew up in Bangladesh.
As well?
Yeah, and there, even though my subject, I get my topics from the politics and the human nature and the people's behavior, something like that. Whatever just moved me and gave me some emotion and some feelings, I write about that.
Thank you very much. And this is really very important that our poets, they have left their country, they have come to a new soil, new nation, but they haven't left their poetry. They have brought their love for their language, Bangla, with them, and they have been continuing writing in Bengali, writing poetry in Bengali, even in Canada. This is really very worthy to mention, and we like to congratulate all our poets who have been writing here, even in the new land. Now I'm going to Kaji Hilal. Kaji, could you please tell or share your experiences of writing in the very beginning time?
Well, Subrata, thank you so much. TIFA, thank you for just giving us the opportunity to talk about the Bengali literature, Bengali poetry, and many other Bengali cultures that we belong to. So, when did I start writing? That's the interesting question.
Yeah.
As soon as I was born. I cried, and my mom said, "Look, my son is reciting a poem." So, the human life is very complex things. So my subject is human life and current any situations that we face to, love definitely, and also our motherland, Bangladesh, our revolution and history, it fascinates me all the way. I go really back when human life just started their journey. That was my beginning. And I started writing when I was about 12 or 13 years old. So far I can remember. I have written something. I don't know whether it was a poem or something else.
But you tried to write something.
I tried.
And what time did the first write-up got published?
The first book was published 2022.
That was the book, but before the book,
yeah.
okay.
This is the book was published in 2022. Before that, my poems were published in different cities, also national newspapers and magazines, university magazines, and all over the places. But it was not published.
Published in a book.
In a book.
Yes, and that was the first book that you tried to anthologize your poems.
Absolutely right. I did. In 2022, this book was published.
But the thing is that I found Shekhar and you both did this thing, meaning that you both of you published your books very later of your ages, after 50 or more than that. Absolutely. Why didn't you do that or try to do that much earlier?
Okay, for that you need inspiration, you know. I got inspired by you.
Oh, you got inspired by me?
Inspiration
I don't know.
Came from you.
What was that?
In 2016, you came to me.
Okay.
And you told me to publish a collection of my poetry.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Yes, and there should be a clap for me, I believe.
And as I said earlier, you told me that why only one book. When we started writing poems, that time we didn't have any hard disk, you know. We couldn't. Now we write.
Yes.
We can save them.
Yes.
You know. We can maintain a file.
Yes.
That time it was scattered, sporadic, you know. So that's why they got lost. Many of my
Yes,
poems,
that
I
was
don't
a
know
great
where
problem during those days. Yes. And okay, let us listen to one of the poems gradually first. Okay, Shekhar, could you please read out your, what should I say, your very favorite poem?
Yeah, these poems are written recently.
Okay.
They are my new poems. I didn't take anything from my book, but
Oh, because that was much before. Oh, that was the book published in 2016.
Yeah.
Inspired by me.
Of course. আমার এই কবিতাটির নাম সময় ও একটি প্রার্থনা। দুঃসময়ের এই ভয়াবহ প্রাচীর কি করে ডিঙাবো, কেমন করে সরাবো এই দুর্মোচ্চ আধার, চারদিকে দুর্লক্ষণেরা ভীষণ তৎপর, শুভদেরা তাই নির্বাসন, স্বয়ং প্রধান দানবের হাতে রাজদণ্ড, যথেচ্ছ গলাধকরণে যে তিমিঙ্গিলকেও হার মানায়। এমন দুঃস্বপ্ন জাগর আয়ু যাপন আর কতকাল, এবার মুক্তি চাই, এবার শক্তি চাই, চাই দ্রোহাত্মক ধিক্কারে ভেঙে দিতে দুর্লঙ্ঘ প্রাকার, এবার ফিরে যেতে চাই জ্যোৎস্নাশীল স্বপ্নের কাছে। হে বুধবর্গ, হে স্বাধীনতা মুগ্ধ বীরেশ্বরগণ, হে মাঙ্গলিক পৌরুষ, হে স্বয়ং শুদ্ধ সত্তা, আমাকে শক্তি দাও, সাহস দাও, প্রজ্ঞা দাও, দাও পরাক্রম।
Thank you very much. Did you have the English, yes, translation of that? Did you do it yourself?
Yes.
Oh, okay, fine.
But my son helped me.
গোলক ধাঁধার পথে। পথে ভাঙা কাঁচে গোলক ধাঁধা গেঁথে আছে, যেমনটা হৃদয় ভেঙে চৌচির হলে বিমূর্ত সব কল্পনা ভাসে, তবু স্বপ্নের ঘরকুটো করে নিজ ঘরেতে সাজায়, দর্পণে ছবি আঁকে। জানি জাগতিক জীবন পরম ব্রহ্মের হাতে তোলে। আজকাল সবকিছুতেই অচেনা সুর, পার ভাঙা নদীর মতো, কানে বাজে, শরীর কাঁপে, চলে বস্ত্র হরণের উৎসব। তারপরও দ্বিধাদ্বন্দ্বের কস্তুরি মেখে পায়েতে ঘুঙুর চড়ায়, হেঁটে যায় গোলক ধাঁধার পথে, যেখানে পড়ে আছে কাচের গুলো। কারণ মানুষ এখন স্বপ্ন দেখে দূরবীন দিয়ে।
Thank you.
My poem actually is translated by someone. I didn't do by myself. It's true things is I'm not good in English literature to write. So I asked some people, they did it right away. I'm very glad and grateful to them. So the guy is the Gulok Dhada Pothe, On the Way to the Mage, translated by Ashraful Alam Shikdar from Dhaka. He is a great writer and translated too. There are mages crafted of broken glass along the way, kind of the broken heart. All the abstract imagination floats. However, one collects the pieces of dreams to furnish one's house, do painting on the mirror. I know worldly life is swing in the hands of the God Supreme. Nowadays, there is a strange tune in everything, like a river bank erosion. It remains in the air and body shakes. The fiesta of stripping is on, and even then, scented with hesitation and contradictory mask, wearing ornament at ankles, walk through the maze where the broken glass is lying, because humans now dream through the binocular.
Thank you very much. And we would like to congratulate your translator because he helped you to make it into English, and for which
But I sent my poem 3 people in India, Calcutta, Bangladesh, even here one of my friends. They did right away. I'm so surprised. They are very nice.
Oh, that is nice to hear. Now we are going to Shiuli Jahan.
My poem name is The Spirit of Ekushe, and it's all about our respect and love to our mother language. Ekushe Chetana. হলুদ কুসুমের উত্তাপে যখন থেকে বুঝতে শিখেছি ধ্বনি, বুঝেছি এ আমার মায়ের ভাষা, আমার অস্তিত্বের প্রকাশ। জেনেছি 52 অর্জন ও বিসর্জনের বিপ্লবী ইতিহাস। সেই থেকে এই ধ্বনিতে আনন্দ বেদনায় জীবনের ইতিহাস গেথে কত হেমন্তের হলুদ মাঠ চোখে মেখে পেরিয়েছি আঁকা বাঁকা মাটির পথ। দেখেছি কৃষকের ঘামে ভেজা সুখ, ইট সুরকির আড়ালে ভোরের সূর্যোদয়। তন্নি শরীরে উদাস দুপুরে কৃষ্ণচূড়ার মাতাল আগুন, ভালোবাসার বনটে কত শ্রাবণের বর্ষণ, কত বসন্ত। সেই গর্বিত একুশের চেতনা বুকে পাঁজরে গুজে, বর্ণমালার আবির ঠোঁটে মেখে আজ বিশ্ব চেতনার উন্মুক্ত রাজপথে ছড়িয়েছি সাদা কালো অক্ষরের মিছিল। বাংলা বর্ণমালায় সাজাই তুষারের শুভ্রতা, আঁকি পলাশের রং আটলান্টিকের সুনীল জলে। আলবাট্রস পাখির ডানায় বাঁধে আগামীর স্বপ্ন, নায়াগ্রার প্রবল স্রোতে লিখি কবিতার পংক্তি। নির্মল আবেগের স্রোতে ভেজে ত্বকের ভাঁজ, পরদেশী মুখে আমার বর্ণমালার বিকশিত শোভায়। ফিরে তাকাই তবুও একবার, জীবন সিঁড়ির এতটা ধাপ পেরিয়ে বিশ্বায়নের চৌকাঠে দাঁড়িয়ে কিছু প্রলম্বিত প্রশ্ন আছে পরে বোধের উপকূলে। কতটা হয়েছে পরিশোধ রক্তের ঋণ? ফুল নয়, আজও রক্তে ভেজা হৃৎপিণ্ড ঘুরে বেড়ায় অমানিসায়। সালাম, বরকত, রফিক, জব্বার আরও অজ্ঞাত শহীদের লজ্জিত ছায়ায়। অপলক দেখি শহীদ মিনারের কালো চত্বর জুড়ে মিশ্র বর্ণের সংবর্ধনা। প্রজন্মের বুকে আজ ক্ষত বিক্ষত 21-এর চেতনা। পড়ছি ট্রান্সলেশন।
Now she is going to read out the English translation of the poem.
The Spirit of 21 and translated by our respected author Sujit Kusumpal.
Kaji Helal, what poem are you going to read out first?
আমি আমার প্রথম কবিতাটি যেটি পড়ব,
The first poem he is going to read out.
ঈশ্বরের নতুন প্রজ্ঞাপন। মানব জীবন যখন খুব সংকটময় একটা মুহূর্ত পার করছিল, সেই সময়কালীন আমার এই লেখা কবিতা আমি পড়ছি। হে মানব জাতি, আমি ঠিক এই মুহূর্ত থেকে তোমাদের সমস্ত স্বাধীনতা কেড়ে নিলাম। আমি কেড়ে নিলাম তোমাদের সন্তানের ভালোবাসা, স্ত্রীর প্রতি তোমাদের অধিকার, জৈবিক উল্লাস। সমস্ত মানব জাতিকে আমি অস্পৃশ্য করলাম আজ থেকে। সন্তানকে তার মাতৃস্তন্য থেকে বঞ্চিত করলাম, পিতাকে তার সন্তানের আলিঙ্গন থেকে এবং বন্ধুকে বন্ধুর উষ্ণ সান্নিধ্য থেকে বঞ্চিত করলাম। আমি তোমাদের পাখিদের মতো আনন্দময় জীবন দিয়েছিলাম। আমি আরো দিয়েছিলাম আকাশের নীল, অসীম জলরাশি, বনরাজির নীরবতা ও অগ্নিময় শক্তি। আজ থেকে আমি অবরুদ্ধ করলাম তোমাদের, কেড়ে নিলাম সবকিছু। স্মরণ আছে, আমি শিখিয়েছিলাম তোমাদের পাথরে পাথর ঘষে অন্ধকারে পথ দেখতে, নিজেদের অগ্নি বলয় থেকে রক্ষা করতে এবং কর্ষণ করে ফসল উৎপাদন করতে শিখিয়েছিলাম। আমি তোমাদের বেঁচে থাকার যুদ্ধে টিকে থাকতে, মহামারী থেকে রক্ষা পাওয়ার শিক্ষা দিয়েছিলাম। সমুদ্রের বৈরিতা উপেক্ষা করার জন্য প্রস্তুত করেছিলাম। আমি স্মরণ করতে বলি তোমাদের প্রপিতামহের কথা, স্মরণ করতে বলি প্রাগৈতিহাসিক যুগের কথা। জীবন যুদ্ধে তারা ছিল সমূহ উজ্জ্বল, তারা ছিল উদ্ভাসিত আলো এবং পর্বতের মতো ঋদ্ধ ও সংযত। তোমাদের বিছানার মাঝে কাঁটা তারের বেড়া দিলাম, সীমিত করলাম তোমাদের চলাচল, বন্ধুকে ঠেলে দিলাম দূরে। আমি সমস্ত মানব জাতির ধর্ম, বর্ণ, গোত্র ভেঙে গুড়িয়ে শায়িত করলাম এক কবরে। আমি তোমাদেরকে আবারও বলছি, নতুন করে ভাবো, ভোগের বাসনা সীমিত করো, সদয় হও পশু পাখির প্রতি, জলস্থল অন্তরিক্ষের প্রতি সংযত হও। আমি আর একবার হাত বাড়ালাম বিলুপ্তির হাত থেকে তোমাদের রক্ষা করব বলে। ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you. Now the English translation. Actually, we the people, when TIFA contacted me and we decided that there would be a session like this, I proposed that there should be the utterance of the Bengali language. I wanted that how the Bengali language sounds. We'll be speaking in English, but we want to make the other audience than the Bengali people, Bengali community people to learn, to know how our language is, how the sound, how the sweet of Bengali sounds are. So we have included these Bengali poems in the original Bengali text. Okay, thank you. And dear audience, thank you.
আজ আমরা সারাদিন ধরে এখানে টরন্টো হারবার ফ্রন্টে সাহিত্য করেছি। সাহিত্যের এই উৎসব টিফা, টরন্টো ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ফেস্টিভ্যাল অফ অথার্সে আজকে আমাদের বাংলা ভাষাভাষী 11 জন লেখক ছিলেন আমাদের প্যানেলে, এবং সাথে ছিলেন সাহিত্যপ্রেমী এবং সাহিত্যিক আরও অনেকে। অনেক ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে সাথে থাকার জন্য, আসার জন্য, উৎসাহ যোগানোর জন্য, এবং আশা করি আগামী বছরগুলোতে টিফা আবারও আমাদেরকে আমন্ত্রণ জানাবে এবং আমরা এভাবেই আমাদের সাহিত্য চর্চাকে এগিয়ে নিয়ে যাব।